I am really feeling winter getting to me. I might need to close the window because I'm really conscious that there's some sort of storm. I thought that the weather was going to be clear because it was reasonably cloudy and not raining this morning, and then 10 minutes later it started to rain. And that's really getting to me. I'm definitely feeling the effect of the end of winter on my energy and my motivation and my mindset, which I know is inevitable and it happens every year, so I don't know why I'm surprised. But I think I'm so excited for spring. But where I am, we don't really get spring till much later. I think the first official day of spring is not until April, 1st of April. It's either the 1st of April or the 1st of May. And it's generally the case that even then it can be really showery and not particularly warm. And to be honest, for the rest of February and March, it's going to be winter weather, which I'm not massively looking forward to. I decided today I was going to do a bit of a chat because I realised I've never properly introduced myself, really. I think I got so swept away with ideas for podcasts and projects and things and I've had a few comments asking me to just introduce myself and say who I am, which is fair because I actually haven't done it really, and I just thought it would be good fun to sit and have a bit of a casual knit and chat on a very blustery day, and then hopefully you can all join in if you have projects to be working on, and we'll have a chilled half hour or so. I'll start with what I'm wearing. So today I've got on my Step by Step sweater by Florence Miller, this was actually the first iteration of this pattern that I made, and I will be making it again because it's just such a great staple. And I have already done another version in Nora, which was one of my finished objects the other week. And this is actually just in Drops Nepal. The alpaca, the one with alpaca, the one that's woolen alpaca, I'm fairly sure it's Nepal, the Aran weight, and a bit of kid silk, because this was honestly the quickest project I've ever done. I think I finished it in 10 days. It was so swift, but it was great because it was just such a comfy jumper and it's really warm, and I have worn it to death, to be fair, since I finished it. And I did alter the pattern a bit, so I didn't do sleeve decreases, so it's got these kind of straight sleeves that are a bit wider towards the cuff, and then twisted rib on the cuffs and collar and hem. I'm going to be working on my sweater number 26. I have the whip basket down here, which I've really been trying to push through the last couple of weeks because I was determined to make a bit of a go at Finish It February, but the Kaleido cardigan that I was planning on working on first just didn't really gel. I was really enjoying it and I was really enjoying the pattern and the project and everything, but I've been getting a lot of hand pain from doing two-stranded colour work because I'm an English style knitter, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in a while. And so obviously when I'm doing two-stranded, I'll usually do the main colour in English style and throw with my right hand, and then whatever the secondary colour is for whatever row I'm working on, I'll usually try to do it with my left hand because my tension and control and everything with the left is just not as good, which I think is common for lots of people. If you knit in one particular style and you ever try to do two-stranded colour work with both hands, I think that's just a problem that a lot of people have. So I found that I was just getting a lot of cramp and a lot of hand pain, and I thought it would be best to put it down and have a look at something that was a bit simpler. So this is just stockinette. This is a sweater number 26, which I have shown before, but it might have grown a bit since then. And this is in a thrifted Shetland wool, which is the 2-ply heather. with these black and white plies, but then this is also held double and also held with a kind of dark grey mohair. And this pattern's brilliant, but it's big. Like, there are so many stitches on the needle all the time. So I think that's why in my mind it's just been taking quite a while. I've been powering through a lot of really quick projects in the last few months, and I think I've really lost sight of more enjoying the process and understanding how long realistically it takes me to do a jumper. Because if a jumper takes me less than 4 weeks, then that's exceptionally fast. Usually it would take me 6 weeks on if I was focusing on one thing consistently to finish a jumper like this. So I really think I need a bit of perspective. But I'm enjoying working on it, and actually it's growing much faster than you think it would, because that's always the way when it's something simple and it's just stockinette and you can just knit in front of the telly and not even pay attention to what you're doing half the time, which is great. So I think I'm going to try and put some rows on this today. I'm filming this on my lunch break from work, so this is usually my relaxation time where I'll sit and try and knit for half an hour to kind of switch off. I think it gives me some good motivation for the rest of the day. I realised I've just never introduced myself properly, so I'm Connie, and I don't think I've ever said my name in a podcast video or anything, but I live in Belfast in Northern Ireland at the moment, and I have been living here for the last 5 or 6 years. And so that's part of the reason why the weather is so appalling and why winter is so miserable and dark. And it's something that I should just have come to accept by now. But I think even if you've lived in sort of more northerly countries your whole life, it's just one of those things that still gets to you even though you think you should be over it. At this time of year, to be honest, it's a lot brighter than it was a few weeks ago. When it was around the solstice, honestly, it was dark at 3:30, 4 o'clock, which kind of does whack you, really, in terms of energy and mental health and things like that. We're pushing 5 now, so I think that's an improvement. But what I'm really looking forward to is hopefully by the end of March it will be getting towards summer evenings, which in the middle of summer, in Belfast particularly, we can sort of get light until 11:30 at night, which is really great. And honestly, you miss it so much when it's the winter, because there's nothing I love more than a long evening and being able to do something productive after work, or, you know, being able to go to bed and it not being completely dark actually just makes you feel so much better, let alone getting up first thing in the morning, because that definitely takes it out of you if you're working 9 to 5 like me, and you're getting up in the dark and going home in the dark, and all of the light hours of the day are basically spent sat in an office, which is very much my life at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to that, and hopefully some milder weather as well. As soon as it gets past 10 degrees, I'm kind of happy with that. I'll make do. It won't get massively warm this summer, but we usually have a couple of weeks of 20, 25, you know, sort of interspersed over the summer months. Which actually, in a way, I'm grateful for, because it means that I can wear my knits all year round. I did actually have a really nice comment from somebody who said that they were weirdly jealous that I can wear knitwear all year round, because I suppose if you live in a warmer country, or if you live in a region that's a lot warmer, I know many parts of the US are as well, I think I would really struggle with putting up for hot weather for months and months on end, because I'm not really built for it myself. I love a holiday and I love the sun, but I don't particularly like not having the choice to be out in it, really. Maybe it's a ginger thing, I don't know. Is it because I burn? Probably. But I definitely need weather which is a bit more mild to stop feeling so down and creaky, and just, you know, it gets to your bones when it's cold for months and months. But this is life. And I'll say the same thing next year, and I'll say the same thing the year after, and the year after that, probably. But I like that we have a bit of light at the end of the tunnel now. It's suddenly gone sunny. I don't know what happened. This is the problem. The weather is so changeable here, and it is all year round, to be honest. But I would say autumn, winter and spring, you're looking at it raining at least once a day. Even if it's only for 30 seconds, it will. And today, I think because of the wind, the weather is really changeable, but hopefully it means that I might get the chance to see some sun at some point before the end of the day. There was a news article, I think, which was saying that there had been no sunshine in Dublin for the last 10 days, which I think was released last week. And I think that's so true of Belfast as well, because honestly, we've been really struggling. And luckily, I've been away. I was away the weekend before last and part of last week, and so I did get, a slight change of scene. I only went to my parents, who actually live in North Wales, so that's not very far away, but it did at least mean that I got to see something different for once. I think a big goal of mine this year is to be a little bit less rushed when I'm trying to finish things. I think I often have such grand ideas of what I want to make and what I want to wear that I will kind of just really knuckle down and try and work on projects all hours of the day, which is not entirely realistic because I do have a full-time job. And although I work usually in the office 3 days a week and then do 2 days a week at home, which gives me a bit of flexibility and lets me do things like this when I'm on my lunch break. But I think it's probably healthy to be able to just put it in perspective that I don't need to own new finished objects every week or even every month, really, And as long as I'm enjoying the process, which I do, I find it incredibly relaxing. I know a lot of people get stressed by working on their projects if they're not going to plan or whatever, but I don't think I could knit any less than I do, and I do knit a lot, which is probably part of the reason that I can finish so much, because I do knit something every day, and usually for an hour or more at a bare minimum. But I think in my downtime, it is often the only thing that I want to be doing. If I'm sitting, I'm knitting. I think that's the same. I'm sure I've heard that somewhere. And I think that's very accurate and reflective of how I feel. I thought I'd tell you a bit about how I got into knitting as well, because I'm not sure I've ever mentioned it. And it was something which crept up on me so suddenly. And then I thought, God, what did I actually do with myself before I was knitting? I can't remember. What did I do when I came home from work? What did I do when I was off uni or whatever? I don't know. I think, like a lot of people, especially people of my generation who've picked it up in the last few years, it was a result of the pandemic and, generally having a lot more free time and a desire to try new things and the time to try new things as well. And I was a student at that time in 2020, which I think was when I finished my first ever project, which was actually the Harry Styles J.W. Anderson cardigan. That was a gateway drug, I think, for a lot of people. It was definitely a big thing on YouTube at the time, and I remember seeing it and loving the design more than anything, and I loved how fun it was, and I wanted to own that piece. I wasn't actually a huge Harry Styles fan. I'm definitely not bothered either way by him, but it was more that I liked the fact that J.W. Anderson made a designer pattern so accessible, because they actually released a knitting pattern for that cardigan, which was what I used to follow. And I'd never read a pattern before. I did learn to knit when I was much younger, when I was about 8 or 9 probably, because my mum and my nana both knit. My mum doesn't really knit anymore. She has done in the past, but I don't think she was ever really into it. My nana does still knit, and so I think it was more that my mum taught me when I was a kid to knit and purl and things like that. I couldn't really do anything else. I think I probably made one very misshapen rectangle, and that was about it. But I definitely knew the basic stitches. So I think when I came to it from wanting to actually get into the hobby and actually make wearable things, because I think it was an interest in clothes that made me want to do it, because I have always loved clothes, and I used to do a lot of sewing even before I picked up knitting and crochet. So I think I was always more interested in the finished product, and then only after I got better I sort of got an appreciation for the process and really enjoyed taking my time and focusing my attention on making something really unique that I loved to wear. So that was my first attempt, and I still have it. It's somewhere in the top of my wardrobe in a storage bag. I don't wear it anymore, mainly because it's not great. Like, is anybody's first project great? I don't know if they are. I think it was more, I loved it in the moment, and I was so proud of finishing it, and the fact that it definitely took me 2 months, I think, to make, but I had no sense of perspective on how long things should take at that point, so I was just happy plodding along, really. And it was like a chunky patchwork cardigan that was, looking back, it does have a really unnatural construction, because you knit the patchwork squares in panels and then seam everything together, and then you seam the bottom ribbing and the collar and the cuffs, which are all knit separately. So I think if I were to go back to it, I'd probably do it in a different way now, but I'm happy to leave that one in the past. I think it was very of its time, and I think as soon as you see that cardigan now, I know I definitely just am immediately reminded of COVID and spending so much time online that was all I saw for months. But I think that was really my first introduction to the idea that I could make something that I could actually wear, and that it would be far higher quality and more affordable than anything I could buy. I know at the moment, I think natural fibres and materials are definitely having a resurgence, like the whole hype around Baba sweaters and companies like Toast and Cezanne, and I'm trying to even think, I'm sure there are lots of American ones that I don't know, producing kind of, more high quality. I'm going to put a caveat there, because I think, I know that some of these companies are not necessarily making products of a quality which reflects the price that they charge. And definitely using more high quality materials and a focus on wool over synthetic fibres. And I think it always bothered me that it was really inaccessible for me at that time when I was a student to be buying pieces like that, because I didn't have hundreds of pounds to drop on anything, quite frankly, let alone clothes. It was definitely not for clothes. So I think it was a great introduction to, what was possible when you were making your own clothes. And to be honest, I think my wardrobe now has got to be at least 50 or 60% handmade, because I also do a lot of sewing, even though I don't show it here. A lot of my things are handmade, but I also charity shop and buy things on Vinted and things like that. So I buy very little new at the moment, and I think I'm ever happier for it. I understand that thrifting or secondhand shopping or whatever you want to call it is not necessarily for everyone, because it is a big time commitment, and I think you really have to enjoy the process of hunting to be able to feel like you're getting anything out of it. And I absolutely don't begrudge people who buy new clothes, because I still buy new clothes. There will always be times where you feel like you need something that is new, and I don't think you can really punish yourself for needing to buy, t-shirts or underwear or something that you don't want to make and you don't want to buy secondhand. And I'm a big believer in the school of thought which says, that 90% of people trying to make sustainable choices in certain areas of their life are more impactful than one person doing it to 100%. And I know I'm definitely not the person to speak on this, because I'm not qualified by any means in that kind of area, but I know a lot of people say that in our current global climate, you can't really punish yourself for following the system which has been set up. So I don't begrudge anyone anything. really, in that respect. That being said, I think this year I'm definitely keen to work with some local fibres, because I'm lucky in Ireland that we have some excellent knitting history, and a lot of, local producers of Donegal tweed and Aran yarns, and we also have excellent hand dyeing businesses and small spinning mills and things like that. There are a few shops in Belfast which I'm hoping to visit this year whenever I have the right projects for them, and I'm really hoping to kind of get something that's really local and a proper souvenir from living here. I know there is a shop called Folklore Yarns who I believe produce their own Donegal tweed in different weights, and you can buy that off the cone, according to whatever weight you need for whatever project. So I think that would be a great idea for some of my projects that are coming up over the next few months. Maybe not for summer knits. I feel like it might be a bit warm, but definitely things towards the autumn. I think I'll think about that, and I'd just like to visit and see what they have on offer. I think I was saying on one of my previous videos that I was wanting to shop more locally this year, and I know that there's a shop which is quite close to me called Folklore Yarns, who produce their own Donegal tweed, which you can buy by weight off the cone, which I think is really a great system, if you have anywhere that supplies yarn like that. And I definitely just love to own a piece in one of their tweed yarns as a kind of souvenir, in a way. Just, since it was local to me, I think it's a great keepsake for the future. And I think one of my goals for this year is definitely to support more of the local businesses, because I have been to a few of the yarn shops here, but by no means all of them, and they are few and far between, but they're definitely not so far that I couldn't make the effort to go. I'd be really interested to see if I don't know if there are any people watching who would be local to Ireland, but if anyone has any recommendations for Irish or Northern Irish yarn producers or companies or even shops or whatever, I don't mind, then I'd definitely be interested to have a look. So any suggestions are greatly appreciated. I did have a comment a couple of weeks ago of somebody asking me to show my stash and how I store my stash, which I would love to do if I had one, but I really don't. I'm not a big stasher. I know some people love to buy prospectively and they love owning a stash, and I absolutely get that. I think if I ever had the money and the space, I definitely would have more of a stash than I do now. But at the moment, I tend to buy things just specific to the projects that I'm making. It kind of helps me mediate how much I'm buying and how much I'm thinking about buying things, because otherwise I'd feel like, I'd feel like I was spending a lot of mental energy on the kind of planning and purchasing process, which is not necessarily something I enjoy, and I'm definitely trying to encourage myself to get away from at the moment, thinking more about what I can do with what I already have. So I do have a basket of yarn, mainly because I always end up with remnants from projects, so there's kind of odd balls or odd skeins or parts of balls of wool that have been left over from something, and I think every few months I try to make a conscious effort to kind of use up a scrap in one way or the other, but that's very much all I have is just scraps. I think the only thing you could consider stash that I own at the minute would be the rest of this cone of yarn, because when I bought it, it was maybe like it was over a kilo. I think I ended up with 10 100-gram skeins and it was 11 100-gram skeins and then a half skein, or maybe 60-70 grams, can't remember. But I'll definitely be using that for another project, because I think it is a 4-ply yarn, And as far as I can predict, I think this project will only use about half of what I have. So there'll definitely be plenty left to do something else with, which would be nice. But then other than that, there's nothing really that I own at the moment, which is for any prospective projects. I am hopefully going to place an order for some Eastex Alafos Lopi and Let Lopi, which is going to be kept under wraps until my next podcast episode. But that is hopefully for a new cast on, which I'm going to start when I've made a bit more progress on this. I'm definitely of the mind that I always like having multiple whips on the go at once, because I really do need variation to be able to keep me interested. I'm constantly trying to reconcile in myself that that I'm never going to be finishing things while I'm working on 3 projects simultaneously. But I also don't want to focus on one project consistently and then get bored to the point where I feel burnt out and just at a creative dead end, which has happened in the past, and I do my best to avoid, because I can acknowledge that I am so much happier and more balanced and more comfortable when I'm making time for crafts. But that being said, I do always like to have something small and something bigger, and maybe something, if I've got a colourwork project, I always want something plain that's easy to switch off and do at the same time. So this is what this is at the moment, and I'm not going to restrict myself overly, and I might cast on something new. Who cares? Who knows? And I'll just keep this going in the background, because at least it's something that I can always switch off and go back to, which will be a nice change of pace. I think it's always good. I was having some thoughts about upcoming videos and wondered if anyone would be interested in seeing more kind of vlog style content. I think I would definitely like to experiment more into that realm in the next few months, and especially as the weather starts picking up and I start leaving the house and socialising again, that might be a nice change. I am averagely sociable, but then it's always the way when it's not sunny and it's not light in the evenings. Who is doing anything? Because it's definitely not me. I do make a point of going to my craft group on a Thursday evening, which my friend and I set up in the autumn just last year, and we meet once a week at a local cafe and just do knitting and crochet and whatever anybody wants to bring, basically. And so that's been a great outlet for making time to see people, but also really prioritising hobbies. And I think in this day and age it's kind of difficult, unless you're connecting with people online, to connect with people over your hobbies in person. I think I was at an advantage when I started in that I was a student, and obviously when you're at a university there's always a great infrastructure around social events and about finding people with common interests. And then as soon as you move into your early mid-20s and the world of work and that type of thing, it's definitely much harder to find. So we just decided that it wasn't going to cost us anything to email a local cafe and just ask if we can have a small group of people there once a week, and obviously they were very keen and said yes, and so that's generally what we do now. And it's been lovely, because I've met lots of new people that I wouldn't have otherwise, and there's people of all ages doing all kinds of different crafts or activities or whatever they feel like, or just coming for a chat. Now I have to go back to work in a moment, but I would love to know how people's weeks have been going and what everyone has been up to. How are you coping with the end of winter? What's the weather like where you are? I want to know if it's better or worse than where I am, because that will give me a bit of reassurance that it could be worse. And I hope everyone is keeping well and looking forward to the start of spring and has lots of nice springtime projects and activities and things planned for when the weather warms up. But until then, I should see you in the next few weeks, hopefully.